Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome back, I should say, on a beautiful day. Actually, it's a beautiful day today, isn't it?
A wonderful fall day.
You're like, okay, well, it's in the fall.
It's in the fall, and the temperature has dropped a little bit, but not too much.
That's right.
So it's cooled off a little bit, and the sun is still shining. So it's wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. So, welcome back to all of you. If you're joining us on a podcast, if you're joining us on one of those platforms or YouTube or whichever platform you're on, we're just so glad you're here. We're glad you found us. We're glad to be part of this process with you and just continuing to get you the information that we find to help you navigate this really difficult time of your life in this process. And there's always many questions we get asked, and there's different dynamics that go into it. And it is not just simple ABC, is it?
it's not. However, though it's not simple ABC or linear 1, 2, 3, right? There is a method.
There's a method.
There is a method.
I love it. And we like to give information to help people discover that method and that process.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So I like what Dr. Robinson stated here. He calls this my way or the highway. What a fun, because we've heard that before, right? It's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that, but I've also heard people say, if it's not their way, it's the highway, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I've heard it both ways. So really what we're describing is the dangers of being inflexible.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Dangers of inflexibility.
So, so all of you that are here, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get the most updated information. And that way you guys are inundated with knowledge to help you navigate all this. And so being inflexible is a big deal. And I'll just say that I've used this example with people. If the wind is blowing really hard and the tree's limbs cannot move, right, they will snap. And I think it's super important that when you are flexible, you can still be rooted,
right,
but you can be flexible.
Absolutely.
And that flexibility, in my opinion, is kind of how you can navigate to a solution in most cases.
Absolutely, Michael. I think one of the things is that I would encourage our listeners to consider, especially those listeners who are going through a divorce or who have been divorced and they're currently co-parenting, right, is to keep in mind that if you didn't get along in marriage, what makes you think the divorce is going to be different?
Well, I think there's a hope there.
There is a hope, right? It would be nice if that hope existed in the marriage, but maybe it didn't. Right? It's okay.
Right.
The reality of it is that you think differently than your co-parent. And so if you remain rigid, then the divorce is going to be worse than the marriage.
So they're getting divorced in hopes that that'll create a change that's better, but not realizing they're walking into something that can be much more difficult.
That could be much more difficult, right?
And so one of the things that you're saying is, you said rigid.
Yes.
Are you explaining that really if you do the other side of being rigid, which would be called what?
Flexible.
That's when
you can reach solution.
Are we done with the podcast today?
The reality, we probably need to unpack this a little bit.
I think that's
right. Because the reality is that one of the reasons why people are very rigid is because they want to be loyal to their core values. And they are afraid that in their flexibility that they are being disloyal to their values.
Oh, wow. Where does that come from?
Well, it comes from a number of things. It can come from imprinting, right? It can
What
come.
is that?
Imprinting is basically how I was raised. You know, my experiences that made a significant impact on my life, what I was taught, the values that were imputed to me, if you will, you know, that were impressed upon me.
Yep.
You know, certain values of, like when you go into the military, depending on which, particularly what branch you go into, you may hear some different slogans, right? And they do that because they need for that to be the core value on how you make your decision in wartime.
That's what imprinting is.
That's what imprinting is, right?
And so as we grow up, there are things imprinted upon us, whether conscious or subconscious.
Absolutely.
And we carry those into our relationships as values.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so then what happens is we become rigid in those values.
Absolutely.
And inflexible.
Absolutely.
And that can lead to problems.
Yes.
I did good.
You did well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was just walking through it with you.
Absolutely.
So let's get into where does inflexibility stem from? Like when people typically are inflexible,
right?
Stemming from a like.
Yeah. So if we think about it from an abnormal psychology approach,
okay,
right, and we think about the diagnosis that we typically use in the field. Very common diagnosis is depression or anxiety, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so when some of these diagnoses are in play, I often look to what's behind the diagnosis, right? And oftentimes, one factor that's behind the diagnosis is control, right?
Both.
Yeah,
there's depression.
Whether it's depression or anxiety, because like if I allow depression to set in, then what happens is that I'm now able to limit the amount of stuff that I have to control.
With depression.
So when I'm depressed, I only have to control when I get up and when I go to bed, when I eat and when I sleep. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to control, whether I watch TV or not. When I'm depressed, whether the kids go to school or not, I'm not worried about it because I'm depressed. Whether they make their doctor's appointment or not, I'm not worried about it because I'm depressed. Somebody else has to come in and encourage me to get up and go to the doctor because I'm depressed.
Right? I see.
Right? When it comes to anxiety, I have to worry about everything. And so since I have to worry about this and I have to worry about that and I have to worry about this and I have to worry about that, I need for you to do this so I don't have to worry about that so I can focus on this. I'm all over the place. All right. And so inflexibility is, no, I'm not going to change that because if I did that, then this will happen. And if that happens, then that will happen. And my mind is all over the place.
And anxiety is typically fear-driven.
It's exactly.
And so you said that one of the common denominators with people with inflexibility is the need to control.
The need to control.
Right.
Yes.
And is that rooted in anything?
That might be rooted in past pain. It could be. That's potential. It could be rooted in a fear of not experiencing their best hope.
Right.
Right. It could be rooted in a number of things.
You know, I actually said this, Dr. Robinson, to someone, and I said, I want you to always, because parents in divorce, they'll come in and say that the other parent, co-parent in this case, is controlling.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a common complaint. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Absolutely.
And what I say back is, if that's true, because I don't know. I mean, I know what you're sharing. If that's true, then what that really states to me is only people that have high levels of control have high levels of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like the two kind of coincide.
Yeah.
I only have to control what I'm really afraid of. It's almost like this is the reason you let the dog out the back door, not the front door.
Yeah.
You let him out the back door, you got a fence.
Yeah.
Typically. So
typically,
you got the fence.
Mm-hmm.
If you let him out the front door, you go potty.
Yeah.
Which is still your yard.
Yeah.
They can end up down the street, down the road, because you can't control it.
Absolutely.
Right? You put them on a leash.
Absolutely.
So the control comes from fear. I've had people that walk their dogs without a leash.
Yeah.
They don't need that control.
Yeah.
They know the dogs don't mind.
Yeah.
You know, so it's still a little dangerous, I think. But they know. It's the idea that if you see high levels of control, then you can assume there's high levels of fear.
Yeah.
And so if people could say your flexibility in this situation is going, if they're super controlling, then that means there's a fear behind that. And I can become flexible in the idea of I can't take away your fear, but I can increase your confidence.
Oh, I like that.
I don't think we can take away fear from people, can we?
No, we can't.
So like when my kids were little and they were learning how to swim, they were afraid to jump in the water.
Right.
So I would tell my kids, jump, I'll catch you, jump, I'll catch you.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't do it. They would, this hesitation. And I could see the fear in them.
Right.
And so what I was trying to do is not make them unafraid, but make them trust in the fact that I would catch them.
Sure.
More than they were afraid to jump in the water.
You know, Michael, so you know I'm a Bible believer. Right?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You know, and so it shows up often in my therapy.
Mine too.
Because, and as you talk about fear, fear is one of those concepts that in Christendom, in my opinion, gets a very, very bad reputation because of interpretation of Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Often, believers will interpret fear as a sin. They will interpret fear as not trusting God. They will interpret fear, and understandably so, because there are passages of Scripture that say, you know, love casts out all fear. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And I understand all of those. And there are times where the Scripture, especially the King James version of Scripture, straight out says, "Do not be afraid."
Straight up.
Yeah, just straight up. Do not.
It was like 365 or 366.
Yeah, it says, "Do not be afraid." And as I have began a journey on studying this, and I have a whole lot more study to do, what I'm beginning to understand is that the Scripture is actually saying to us, do not let fear stop you. All right? So even when we look at Psalms 23, and David says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because thou art with me. The real translation of that is that I will not allow fear to stop me in the face of evil because you are with me. It doesn't say that he's not going to be afraid.
It means that he's choosing the faith.
See, I think the thing that we have to understand is that courage and confidence has no power if fear is not present.
What does that mean?
What that means is if I run out into the street,
yeah,
and cars are coming,
right,
it's not that I'm running out there because I'm brave. I might be running out there because I'm stupid.
Sure.
You understand what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So what happens is when I get to the street and cars are coming and I don't want to get hit by a car, I'm going to use wisdom to look both ways to see when is the best time for me to cross the street.
That's right.
All right. So, you know, I like the analogy of the Lion King. When Simba went to the graveyard, the elephant's graveyard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Mufasa went after him. And afterwards, Mufasa does this little speech with Simba. And he says, I just want to be like you. You're brave and you're not afraid of anything. And Mufasa said, that's not true. I was afraid that I might lose you today. He said, being brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I think that we have to understand the significance of fear. Now, there are some people who are paralyzed by fear, and there needs to be a breaking of that paralyzation, right? But fear is one of those things that's just like any other feeling that we have: anger, shame, guilt, loneliness, joy. All of those feelings, all of those emotions are designed to tell us something about ourselves, what's going on with us.
Call them check engine light.
Absolutely. We just don't need to stop in that emotion. Right.
When therapy is supposed to help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The navigating of it.
Yeah.
So talk about, if you don't mind, with inflexibility, about resentment and desire to, it looks like, punish.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Yeah. So oftentimes a person can become inflexible because they're angry about what happened to them in the marriage.
And that's the resentment.
That's the resentment. That's unfair.
Did they use words like that?
They don't.
Okay. What do they? What will they say?
Words they would use? He never loved me. He always cheated on me. He just wasn't right. You know.
Do they use never and always?
Never and always. Took me for granted. And so that's how I know that it's shifting to a place of punishment. You took me for granted. Now I'm going to show you.
Oh, we start in resentment, we end on punishment when we're inflexible. So inflexibility starts as resentment.
Yes.
So it's almost like the seeds.
Yes.
And then the behavior. So kind of what sprouts from that is punishment.
It's punishment.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Do you think that the other side responds in the same way? Like they resent you for punishing them?
Absolutely.
So now they want to punish you?
Absolutely. So it depends on the person, right? You know, some people, they just play the game. You know, they go along with it, whatever they say, that's fine. Or they don't respond at all. There's a passive aggressiveness to it.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've seen it happen multiple ways. I've seen where a co-parent will come in and they will give the facade that I'm here to get along. I'm here to do whatever needs to be done. I just want to see my kids, right? When in all actuality, behind the scenes, outside of therapy, they're doing everything to disrupt what they say that they want.
Or one of the ones I always get worried about is, I just want whatever my kid wants.
Yeah, that's a big one, Michael. I have many clients who come in, many families who come in, who the parent will say, I don't want to make them go see the other parent if they don't want to. I mean, I don't feel like I should force them to do that. And I struggle with that one, because it's like, how many other things do you make them do that they don't want to do?
Well, the part that I have with that is that to me speaks to your own levels of what you feel about that person. I'm not going to make them go see this person because I don't like them either.
Right.
I'm not going to make them go see their dad or their mom because I don't like their mom or dad either.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what really is, what's tied into that, which they don't tell you, is I'm in agreement with them not going, or they may say, I don't think it's a good thing. I really don't think it's good that their other parents not involved.
Right.
Like, I really wish they had a good relationship.
Sure.
But I don't have a good relationship with them. And so why would I force them to go into that? Do you think that maybe is a part of the parent feeling a little bit of guilt? Like, I got to get away, but my kid can't?
Right. And they almost feel hypocritical when they're encouraging their child to make a relationship with the other parent, and they don't have to.
Oh, there's a hypocrisy to it.
Yeah.
I'm forced to send my kid to have a relationship with the other parent.
Right.
But I can walk away from it and the kid can't.
Right. And that's one piece. Another piece, though, Michael, is that somehow operating in the divorce is not reflective of the person's value. So like, I don't believe in divorce. This divorce should have never happened. And so I struggle to see the things that you're asking me to do to be right, because the divorce in and of itself is wrong.
Wow. I'm going to be honest with you, Dr. Austin. This is like probably deeper than I think people probably expected when they saw the title of this one.
Sure.
I'm not mad at it. I'm just saying.
Well, I think when you start talking to the pieces that are influencing people's choices in divorce, that's what sets them free to make the better choice.
Oh, say that part. If you can repeat that.
So when you start talking to the pieces that influences people's choices,
yes,
and you expose that, that helps them to make the better choice.
So basically, it sounds like when you can tell yourself that my resentment and my need to punish is present, that's when you can start changing it.
Absolutely.
You can go from inflexible to flexible. So one sign of inflexibility is, are you harboring resentment, which is, are you sowing seeds?
Yeah.
That will lead eventually into you wanting to punish, whether consciously or subconsciously.
Absolutely. And I think about it from this perspective as well, Michael. When you do the right thing in spite of what the other person does,
right,
it doesn't necessarily mean that you're condoning what they're doing. Right?
Does it feel that way, though?
I think for a lot of people it does.
I agree.
Right. So for instance, like, if you say, all right, I'm divorced and I didn't want this divorce, and it should have never happened, and I'm angry about this divorce, or or I'm trying to find my way to move on from this divorce, because I think some people they've gone through the grief process, they've gone through the grief cycle, they've gone through
Which is normal.
right, which is shock, denial, they bargained, right, anger,
Sadness,
depression, and then finally acceptance.
Right.
As they get to that point where they're accepting the divorce, but now they're being asked to move forward in a way that still feels foreign to them.
Makes sense.
Right.
Because of where they are.
Because of where they are.
Well, that leads it into, is it about me, you, or the kids?
Yeah.
That section of the topics we were discussing here. How do you discern the difference?
And that's the part that's very convoluting, right? Because oftentimes a parent will say, I am making this decision for my children. They did not have a divorce in this, a voice in this divorce, right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
They do not have a voice in this divorce, and I need to be a voice for them, right? Or
so it's about the kid. They're saying it's about
the kids, right? And then they'll say things like, they didn't choose this, they didn't ask for this, right? And while all of those statements are true,
right,
the problem that we run into is when we try to overcompensate for their misfortune, if you will, maybe even the trauma that goes along with this divorce, right? The better thing to do therapeutically, structurally, systematically, I'm talking about the systems here. The better thing to do is to allow the child to feel whatever it is that they're feeling about this divorce and walk them through it.
How?
Right. So if a child is angry about the divorce, validate the anger. So now what are we going to do with this anger? Right. And so one of the theories that I follow identifies that the spiritual gift associated with anger, because I need to make my decision from the spiritual gift, not from the emotion.
Yeah.
Right. Is strength. But it's not the strength to cuss you out. It's not the strength to pick up a ball and throw it at a window or a baseball bat and take it to your car. Right. It's the strength to make the right decision, even when I feel like I've been wronged. Because anger is the emotional response to injustice.
Anger is the emotional response to injustice.
Right.
Or perceived
injustice.
Wow.
This is not fair. Why am I going through this?
Talk about that word fair for a second.
Yeah.
Do you think that flexible or inflexible people use that term more often?
Yes, I think they use that very often. Because
flexible or inflexible people?
Inflexible people.
Say fair.
It's not fair. I'm just going for what's fair. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know about inflexibility, what we know about flexibility, is that flexibility does not live within the boundaries of fairness.
Yeah, I see that.
Right.
I see that.
But it can live in the boundaries of equitability. See, fair is almost the same as equal.
I think that's the way people describe it.
Yeah.
Fair is equality.
Yeah. But what we have to go with is equitability. I'll give you this one example. I was in a conversation not too long ago where a mom was talking about having her adult sons who live with her contribute to the household expenses.
Got it.
All right. And one particular son is not working yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that son is involved in some very much needed services of help. And the other son, although he's college age, is not going to college and is only working.
Got it.
And so she was struggling with having the one son who's working to contribute while the other son who's not working to not contribute.
Oh, yeah. The prodigal son story.
Yeah,
the Bible, isn't it?
Right. And so I explored with her this concept of equitability.
Right.
I said, so he's not working. Is it more important for him to work, or is it more important for him to receive these rehabilitative services that he's getting?
Hmm.
And she said, well, it's absolutely more important for him to receive these rehabilitative services. I said, so does that kind of, at this moment, exempt him for having to contribute since he has nothing to offer? Because in this state, you're kind of supporting him.
Yeah.
You know, you're being a bridge, right?
Right.
I said, so is it an issue of fairness or equitability? He's working. He's making money. Why shouldn't he contribute to the household?
How does she respond to that?
She accepted it, right? But she had to move past her rigid state of mind.
Oh, that goes back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had to go towards flexibility, you know, to understand it.
Mhm.
And not to mention that she was also struggling with the thought and the idea that her parents never made her pay anything while she was in college and working, right?
Yeah.
And so then I was like, yeah, but your boy is not even in college. He's just working.
You know?
And he's offering.
Yeah. And he's offering.
And he's
Wow.
offering.
Let's talk a little bit about conversation, like conflict versus collaboration, when it comes to this topic of my way or the highway, becoming flexible versus inflexible, and how that's all rooted in. When you say conflict versus collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that you made a note here for me, not to be afraid. I don't know if I could read this fully here.
Yeah.
Not to be afraid to get along
With your ex.
like not to be afraid of it.
Right.
So what do you mean by conflict versus collaboration? Not being afraid.
Not being afraid to get along with your ex. I think that many people are afraid to get along with their exes because then it in some way that it violates their values because they have a
It goes back to a value.
It goes back to values because they have a perceived idea of who their ex is and that their
Yes.
ex has a set of values that they don't value.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so if I'm getting along with them, then I must condone their values.
That's what that is. And that's the fear of getting along.
Yeah.
Because then I'm condoning the values that I may not agree with.
Right. Because I'm afraid to collaborate with you, then I might take my values.
I'll lose mine
Right.
to accept yours.
Right.
So how does it become collaborative?
Right. It can become collaborative because oftentimes the goal is the same. It's just how we get there is different.
Oh, and this goes back to an old saying when we used to say, first you have to parentally align before you can co-parent.
Absolutely.
Because I love people bring in they don't co-parent. Well, what I'm usually hearing is they're not doing what I need them to do.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying is they're not co-parenting.
Right.
But when you sit down with parents and you kind of go through the conversations, you realize that they're actually aligned on what they want. They have very different ways of how they want to get there.
Absolutely. Now, there are a couple of caveats. One in particular caveat that I want to bring out is when there is a fear that the child is rejecting me.
Well, that's from the parent's
Yes.
relationship with the child.
Yes.
The fear that they're being rejected by the child. Okay.
Right. And there's a fear that if the child is rejecting me, then I have to do things to get the child's acceptance. But then I also have this fear that the parent is supporting that rejection.
Wow. Is that something they say, or is that just something you picked up on?
Typically, I pick up on it, but oftentimes they'll say it. They don't necessarily say it that way.
Yeah. How might it sound?
So it might sound like this. It might sound, well, my daughter says that she doesn't want to spend time with me, but I really believe that that's coming from her other parent.
Basically, the child says this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's them. I think
It's the other parent.
Get that a lot.
A lot.
And where is that rooted in?
Well, it's rooted in my opinion, as far as the child is concerned, they're going to align with the parent that they feel is safest to align with, because they're in some way feel like that they're forced or made to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So me being a parent, a product of divorce, my parents were divorced. I can remember as a little kid having a longing and a desire for my dad.
So you're with your mom, but you have a longing for your father.
I had a longing for my father. And I remember having a moment of feeling guilty about that because my mom was present. My mom was making sacrifices. My mom was doing all these things, to care for me. And I remember I was writing a letter to my dad, and my mom's friend, I'm not naming any names, by the way.
I like how you went right into the mic. No names.
One of her friends, I'm not going to say which one it was.
Okay, it was a friend.
It was a friend who had come to the house, happened to come. She had been coming pretty regularly, but happened to come while I was writing this letter to my dad. And she was impressed with what she saw as far as my dedication into writing this letter. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm writing a letter." And she said, "That is so nice. Oh my gosh. People don't write letters anymore. And to see young people writing letters, that is so nice. Who are you writing a letter to?" I said, "I'm writing to my daddy." "Yo, daddy."
Wow. How did you respond as a child?
And so I was like, why is it so wrong for me to write a letter? "You need to be writing a letter to your mama." I was like, I live with my mama. I see her every day.
That's raw, man.
And so she was like, "Y'all always want your daddies. They not around. They don't do nothing for you. And you always want your daddies."
How did that have an impact on you, on how you saw your father?
So at that point, I was old enough. I was probably about 12, maybe. Let's see. No, I was probably about 12, no more than 12. I was old enough to recognize that what happened between my dad and my mom was not my fault.
Which is real important.
Which was very important. And that without telling her, because it would have been disrespectful for me to do so,
Right.
her opinion of my daddy didn't matter.
You did that at 12.
I did that at 12.
Wow.
And so I simply said to her, "I got a letter from him last week, and I'm simply responding."
And that was enough.
And that was enough. That was enough for me. I don't know if it was enough for her.
Well, it doesn't matter.
No.
I think that's what we got to remember is,
Yeah.
Here you are, a child. I love what you said. I think people forget the part that sometimes our kids may feel guilty for wanting or yearning that relationship with that other person.
Yeah.
I used to always argue that sometimes kids will hurt the emotionally safe parent.
Right. Absolutely.
So if the other parent's the emotionally safe person,
yeah,
right, they're more willing to hurt that person because they know that person will still love them,
Sure.
even if they reject them.
Sure.
But God forbid, if they reject the parent they've always craved,
yeah,
that parent may reject them back.
Well, and this is the thing. It makes sense for the child to long for the parent that's not there. Longing only exists when there's loss.
Wow. So like when these parents, do you think parents take it personal? They become inflexible.
They do.
Take it and take it personal as if the child's longing for the other parent that's not been present. Like, I've been there the whole time.
Absolutely.
And they want the other parent who's not there.
Absolutely. And that's the true story of the prodigal son, by the way. So when you look at the story of the prodigal son, it's in my opinion, is really totally mistitled. It shouldn't be called the prodigal son.
Not entitled.
I know.
Oh.
I know. It's just my opinion. It should be titled The Father.
It's about the father.
Because it's really about the father.
Uh-huh.
And what he did for the prodigal son is that he never lost his love and affection, even though his son disrespected him, rejected him, and was disloyal.
Oh, but he wanted his inheritance.
And he wanted his inheritance. Right? It was really about the love of the father, right? And so when that son comes back and he throws this party, right?
To celebrate his once dead son.
Right, who's now alive. And what he said to the other son who got jealous.
Oh, yeah?
He said to him, "You've been with me always. You've always been with me. Me throwing this party for your son ain't got nothing to do with anything that you may or may not lose. If you want to party with your friends, we can have it."
Can I say something on this?
Sure.
And I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to do a little quick recap. I heard, and I didn't say this. I wish I could remember people's names, but there's a lady out there. I know it's a female.
Sure.
She does a lot of podcasts, and she's on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I almost had her name and I lost it. Doesn't matter. I think it's Mel. It's Mel something. But anyway, she said something. I loved it.
Okay.
She said, jealousy is just desire in disguise.
Oh, of course.
Jealousy is desire in disguise. If you find yourself as a parent and you are jealous of something in the other parent, in reality, you desire that.
So,
I mean, you can tell me if it's right or not. No, I think it's great.
No, to your point, it is the passion that the present parent, or I might call reunifying parent, because they are already in the relationship versus
their relationship's fine. The other parent feels that their relationship's broken.
Right, yeah,
Severed in some way.
Right. So that parent can become jealous when that child is alive and alert and desiring that relationship with the parent, with that other parent. When in all actuality, what that parent, that non-reunifying parent, actually really wants is appreciation. And this is what I hope that parents will understand, is that children are not wired to appreciate. They are wired to desire.
Wow.
We have to teach them how to be. Notice what we say. What you say, whenever somebody gives you something, what you say, thank you. You teach them to say.
Can I say it like they do it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And oftentimes they have a hard time saying it.
They do.
Right.
Juggle it.
Right. And that lasts all the way into adolescence.
Isn't that crazy?
They don't like saying thank you.
Oh no.
All right. And so what that parent, that non-reunifying parent wants, they want the appreciation of their child. But if you look at our culture, look at our society, when have children really ever really been appreciative? Not until they get older.
Right.
Not until they mature. Not until they recognize and realize that, oh my gosh, look at what all my parents have done for me.
Right. Well, we can keep going, but let's recap this. Let's kind of help the listeners so they can get on the rest of their day. Would love to say to you guys a couple things to recap. Remember that Dr. Robinson, I think, shared, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Robinson, is monitor your own values.
Absolutely.
Okay. Understand where they are, where they come from. Understand that even from your childhood all the way through, your values are influencing where things are going. Notice the seeds you plant, right? If you have seeds of resentment, those seeds then can develop into punishment. And so you're rooting yourself in resentment, and then what waters them is all that resentment, all that pain is then watering it down, and it sprouts into the need to punish because it has to be just.
Absolutely.
Right? There's been an injustice,
yes.
Right? There's a level of fairness, and we hear these words, and so that's how we know where we're headed. So I heard that too. And really, I think the key takeaway here is remaining flexible.
Absolutely.
Right? Allowing yourself permission to get along with your ex, absent the fear, using the faith of what you're hoping to create.
Absolutely.
Right? We can't get rid of fear. Right? What do?
Yeah.
We can increase confidence. So
absolutely.
Those are the key takeaways, I think, from my way or the highway. So when you are dealing with another parent and it's their way or the highway, right? Just know that typically high level of control is high level of fear. And the need to be inflexible could be rooted in resentment.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is the need to punish. And so I guess the key takeaway for those people that feel that it's their way or the highway, what should they be doing?
Yeah.
What should that person be doing in response to that?
Forgive.
I think that's enough. Forgiveness. And forgiveness starts with grace.
Absolutely. And forgiveness is not saying that what you did was right. What forgiveness is that I'm okay in spite of what you did.
So we can move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forgiveness is what helps us move into flexibility.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I hope you will continue to subscribe to the podcast so you can get the newest information. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook. Facebook is Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. Instagram is Brighter Possibilities FC, if you're looking for us there. And, of course, find us on YouTube and all the different places on the podcast. You can find us Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I think we're on a couple others, too, now.
We might be. Yeah.
We spread out, which is good. We're getting, I think, to more people, which is really helpful. So thank you. Come back and see us. Dr. Robinson, I'm sure we'll be on more.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Love it. Thank you all so much. Keep moving forward.